Folks, yesterday we did the tragic story of former Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Justin Fairfax, committing murder-suicide against his wife, Serena Fairfax. He shot her several times. It was a heinous crime that resulted, again, in her murder at the hands of her husband. Well, after the show, a number of people sent me a story that we had not seen from Chicago, where a murder-suicide there took place on Tuesday. The son of the late Cook County Commissioner, Dennis Deere, killed his mother and then himself. Again, another murder-suicide. According to Chicago police, 23-year-old Caleb shot his 51-year-old mother, Barbara Deere, 3 times before shooting himself in the head. Now, Dennis Deere died from complications from a double lung transplant in 2024. According to folks in Chicago and different reports, Caleb was still dealing with the after effects of his dad's death. Last week, we told you the story of the sister in Florida, Vice Mayor, who was killed by her husband. He was arrested and charged for murder. You also have the story of the black influencer who was found dead in Zanzibar, and they're investigating her fiance. With these stories, what you have seen, what you have heard, is a significant amount of anger and pain and distrust from black women saying we must be protected. When you talk about husbands, we talk about being a protector, being a provider. But when husbands take the lives of their wives, that's not protecting. The question then becomes, how do we deal with this? There are a number of people who are expressing anger, outrage, upset by what has taken place. The conversations have been heated, have been emotional. But the question comes down to, how do we change this? How do we, as a community, as a society, confront the reality that 96% of domestic violence cases are being committed by men? How do we deal? How do we confront? How do we change abusive behavior of men against women? Black men against black women. Now, the reason I understand domestic violence, because I know what it's like to have a sister who calls you and flees to your home, afraid of her life and those of her 2 children. I lived that experience, lived it, dealing with my sister and her 2 kids. Cousins physically abused. And so when these things happen, first of all, sister's husband, he's sitting in prison. When these things happen, how do we confront it? How do we deal with the grief in the aftermath? And how do we then say change behavior? So we had a conversation last night with a couple of brothers. Tonight, Dr. Monique Swift. She is the new president of the Association of Black Psychologists. She joins us right now. Dr. Swift, what's very interesting to me is that I made several posts on Instagram. We even posted a couple of the clips from last night. And several people said, why are we having a mental health conversation? We should be having a domestic violence conversation. My response was, we have to deal with what's happening in a person's head that leads them to commit domestic violence. Typically, when we have domestic violence conversations, we're talking about how a person needs to retreat, how they need to leave the home, how they need to flee. Well, that's, again, responding after something has happened. But the question I'm posing to you first is, how do you see us confronting this issue? 4 cases in 2 weeks of black women murdered by men in their lives, 2 of them black husbands, 1 a black son, and we don't know the outcome, what happened in the case of the white man in Zanzibar.
Yes, sir. Brother Roland, firstly, thank you. Thank you for having this uh, conversation this evening. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of the conversation. Where you're talking about is very serious and is far more pervasive than these four cases that you've cited.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when we look at this, we need to look at it from that broader lens and not just look at the heinous atrocities that happen to these individuals. And that's to know, uh, uh, not to shade what happened to them in any mitigating kind of a way at all. But there's something more pervasive and very insidious that's happening. There's a pattern happening here within our community. There was once a time where women were um, they were in an honored position in our history, in our traditional African centered way of being. And that is shifted. That's no longer the case. There's something happening between where we were and where we are. And there's a lot in that gap. And so we can sit and kind of focus on all of the personal, uh, the personal matters surrounding these incidents. But I do think we would be wise to, again, look more broadly at we are socially, um, we, we are breaking, right? We are breaking under pressure of the not being recognized in this country. The racism is at an all-time high. You talked about the racist administration in the last segment. We are, jobs are hard to come by for many of us. There's a lot of stress in the home. There's stress in society. People are under the stress. And what was once protective for Black people, right? Us with one another, we are now turning against one another under this pressure. And
What?
so there's a lot of different facets to
Mm-hmm.
what we're talking about, what we're seeing here.
What do you? How do you respond? And I've had um, sisters say this to me. And first of all, I've gotten responses for a wide variety of people. After last night's show, I woke up and a number of men uh, text and email said, I needed to hear that because I need to do a better job of checking on my brothers. I had sisters hitting me as well. I had others who said that, well, we should not be talking about what Justin Fairfax was dealing with and going through. We should be centering his wife, Serena Fairfax, and we should be having the focus on her. Others said, well, he's a murderer, and so we shouldn't be talking about him. We should be talking about her being murdered. My response was, I don't want there to be more murders. I don't want there to be more folks beaten. And so if we're going to confront murder suicides and sisters feeling unprotected, then we're going to have to understand what the hell is going on with these men, which requires us to analyze what is going through their minds. What are they dealing with that's resulting in the heinous actions that ends in beatings, breaking black eyes, breaking of body parts, or death, murder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with you. You can't have the conversation about one without having the conversation about the other. And frankly, the truth is hurt people hurt people. So the unpopular part of this conversation is recognizing that these people that are committing these heinous crimes that are harming women in the way they are, often themselves are hurt people. And we don't want to look at that because we don't want to have the empathy. We don't want to see the humanness of these people. And so we just want to focus on where the harm is. And again, I'm not putting one above the other by no stretch of the imagination. My heart goes out to the sisters that have been harmed and killed in these situations, and then all of those who love these women. But I think you make a very valid point, Brother Roland, that how do you talk about what happened to this woman without talking about why did what happened to this woman happen? And the why is in it's in the mind of these men. But again, broadly, I think there's a social condition that we're seeing here, right? The trauma is real. And often these people who are doing these things, they have experienced trauma. And as I said, hurt people, and the cycle continues.
So with that, 'cause again, there were sisters telling me on social media posts, why are you having a mental health conversation when this was domestic violence? Look, you're the expert. And my response was the person that commits domestic violence or femicide or murder, that's mental. Something was going on up here, because that's not a normal thing. It is not normal for a man to beat his wife, girlfriend. It's not normal for a man to pick a gun up and murder his wife. And I said, you have to deal, because something here caused that to happen. So that is mental. And so I wasn't understanding when people were saying it's one or the other, when I said they actually have to go together. Your assessment?
Yeah, I frankly, I don't quite understand either. It is domestic violence is mental. There's a mental health component to that, right? Why are people being violent toward one another? There's something going on when people are acting in ways that are out of the ordinary, right? When behavior is extreme, we're looking at mental health conditions. We're looking at mental stress or distress, right? And so I really can't necessarily respond to those who are not kind of making that connection. What might they be, how they're thinking about this? Perhaps they want to focus more on and have more compassion for the victims of these situations, and just and view the mental health conversation as evoking perhaps too much empathy. And we don't want to feel for this other person. We don't want to see them
Yeah, yeah.
as not being
I actually got that. If, folks, let's say he's a monster, he was evil, and you're portraying him as the victim. I said, no, I'm not. I literally said, listen, my desire is I don't want to see any sister murdered. I don't want to see any sister who's beaten. I said, so in order for us to live in that world, if 96% of all domestic violence cases are involving men, I want that to be 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 0. And so for me, I said the only way how I see confronting or dealing with this story is I have to get in the minds of these brothers to understand
Mhm,
why they're pissed off, why they're
mhm.
angry, why they snap, what's going on from childhood to present day, getting them to understand that your wallet or the size of your paycheck does not determine whether you're a man. I said there are a plethora of things that we have to deal with. And I had, and one very prominent activist said, Roland, we need a beat. I said, sister, you just told me that a black woman was shot and killed by her husband last week, the sister in Florida. Then the case in Zanzibar. Then the case in Cook County. I said, then the murder-suicide of Justin Fairfax against Dr. Serena Fairfax on Wednesday. I said, how long am I supposed to wait? I said, I'm trying to make sure we don't have another case. And so that, and again, it's not me personally, but I'm hearing from other brothers and sisters who are saying, we don't want there to be any murder. So the question then becomes, what do we do? Do we sit in our grief, or do we say, hey, while there are those who are grieving, those of us who are also grieving are also saying, how can we begin to tap into the minds of the individuals who are causing the harm so they don't cause the harm?
Right. And then so there's that, right? Tapping into the mind, find out what's going on. As all that you said, what pushed them over the edge? What are the stressors that they're dealing with, right? But again, this is not just an individual level thing. We have to look at it broadly. But just even from this perspective that you're speaking about, I think taking it even one step further that many people are somewhat adverse to is, now that we understand a bit about the circumstances around why this person did what they did, how now do we repair, right? How now do we bring this back together? And I'm a strong proponent of restorative practice. And so that involves bringing those who harmed together with those who were harmed, right?
But
And
but but aren't we trying to make sure that they don't harm? That we're trying to actually,
absolutely
we don't want them to harm. So the thing is,
right.
how do we catch something? A sister told me she was in Jamaica and they were by the pool, and she said his big brother slapped his girlfriend, threw her phone in the pool, and she was angry because the other brothers who were there with their girlfriends did nothing. And
Hmm.
she says, Roland, I'm afraid. She says, I'm always looking at an exit strategy. What happens when a man is getting mad because I don't give him my phone number? She said, I'm not feeling protected. And what I said to her, I said, what you just told me tells me that first, those brothers who were sitting there and who watched it, they've seen his anger before and they said nothing. And for whatever reason, they chose to say, y'all, I ain't getting involved in that. I said, when what we actually need are brothers to say, bruh, let me holler at you. No, no, no. Walk away with me. What are you doing?
Hmm.
Why are you getting upset? Because that trigger, we gotta understand, why did this thing cause you to get violent, which then could result, oh yeah, today you slapped her, but tomorrow you could kill her.
Absolutely. You remind me of a study that Dr. Joy DeGruy spoke about in her book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, when she was looking at violence, and she did a study with people who hadn't been in prison for violent acts, and she looked at various factors that could contribute to it to find out what pushed people to the point of committing a violent act, from being angry to committing a violent act. And of all the things that she looked at, the thing that stood out the most, and she was looking at Black men, was disrespect, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's what happened in these instances, but what
Right,
I am saying is speaks to something deeper that's going on within someone, right? And this is not just a one person, right? These are many people
right.
that experience that. So there's something about the experience, most particularly of Black men in this society,
Mm-hmm.
that keeps them right there on the edge. That something like a scuff on their shoe or
Yep.
being embarrassed or whatever it might be can push them over to the edge of being very violent and possibly even killing someone. What is going on? Now we can sit here and point the finger and of shame at all of these Black men who are doing these things, and they should be shamed for doing what they've done. But again, I want to stress the point that there's something else happening, that there's a context that is creating the condition under which this violence is playing out. And that's what we need to look at. We need to look at the broader context. You talked about some of it in the past segment. I'm sure you talked about it in many previous shows as well. There's something going on. Something has happened in the lives of Black people in this country. From enslavement forward, we have been fractured, we have been broken in ways that cause us to not be able to see and even honor each other's humanity. And so now, instead of a husband and wife being back to back and looking, having each other's back is what I'm trying to say. Now we become adversaries in this thing. So you know, you can't, the pool situation that you talked about, it makes me think about all these videos where someone's being brutalized, whether it be by a police officer, which is almost mostly the case, or someone else, and everyone pulls out a phone and just records it,
Yeah.
right? What is going on in the minds of all of us as a society where we've desensitized ourselves to violence, to one another? Because I can guarantee you, if the people who have their phone out and they're taking the video, if it was somebody that they loved, they would not respond that way.
Right.
So what happened caused us to be able to look at each other in a very distant way, as though we're not connected, as though we're not one people. There's something happening. There's something broken in our social network, is what I'm pointing out.
And when we're talking about in panel, get ready. Somebody come to y'all with questions after I ask this question to Dr. Swift. When I'm talking about how do we control emotions, how do we in the moment assess something? I was again was another sister who hit me today, and I was saying that if I'm at a dinner party and there's 6 or 8 of us there, let's say it's 4 couples, And all of a sudden, the dude goes off over something dealing with the menu, and his wife or his girlfriend said something. I said, the other 6 people are likely to go completely quiet and just
Mhm.
don't say anything. As opposed to a brother saying, yo, Bill, let me holler at you. And pull him aside, go outside, say, bro, I need you to calm down. But I need to understand, why'd you go off? It's a menu item. What that's not significant. What made you yell at your woman and now she's scared? Now the other people at the table are scared because you showed that flash of anger. And I think in these conversations, we literally have to teach people how to control
Right.
emotions, how to deal with emotions, how to
Mhm.
deal with setbacks. I think, and this is not. This is not for anybody watching. This is not making light of these cases we're talking about. But early in my marriage, I am very particular about my clothes. I got golf clothes. I got other stuff. So my dad taught all of us how to wash clothes. And so mama did too. So it was like light, dark, hot, cold, warm. So I got piles. So my wife decides to wash something and the pan shrunk. Now, Dr. Swift, I was like, why did you put these in the dryer on hot? I went,
It took everything in you, didn't Brother
I
Roland?
said, from now on, if you get the urge, because I have piles, I said, if you get the urge to wash something, just pick up one thing and look at the label. She's like, you got all these special clothes. I said, you know what? We good. I will wash my clothes. Now, mom and daddy taught us how to do that. Hell, I can wash her stuff too. She's like, well, I wash all my stuff together. It's fine. But the point is, because I was thinking about when you said a scuff on the shoe, that could have turned into a large argument. But I stopped to go, is it necessary to even have this argument? Is it that big? Or here's the solution to the problem. You ain't got to worry about it. I got this. Ain't had
Right. And
no.
that's easy.
And she was like, cool, go ahead and wash your stuff. But the point is, I stopped myself from being upset about some pants that shrunk, came to a conclusion, came to a result, and said, this is how we going to move forward.
Hmm. Okay.
We have to teach
Now,
folk those things.
well, yes, you're right. Someone taught you, right? I could assume that you came from a home where perhaps you saw conflict being managed in healthy ways, right? Not everybody comes from that type of an environment.
Right.
And so, and so if I come from an environment where I'm always feeling triggered and threatened, right? Where I
Boom.
feel disrespected all the
Mm-hmm.
time, where I feel incompetent, or if I come from that type of an environment and that experience, sometimes something very little can be the world to me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really something small to someone else. And so this is why this is exactly going to your point earlier, why this is a mental health issue, right? This is not the ordinary way that most people would act under certain circumstances. But I also want to look at the other piece, because you talked about the bystander, right? The person who
Yep.
seeing this and does nothing, right? What is going on in the mindset of that person? Often nowadays, people are afraid because I don't want to get involved because I don't want to get injured. I don't want to get harmed. And that's what people, or I can get sued if this or if that. Like, we're thinking about all these other things, but in the process of that, we're losing our humanity with one
Mm-hmm.
another. And so that's problematic. We've got to get that back together. We've got to get back together again as a family and see the humanness of one another. That's what is missing. That's what's missing in this equation. And so we become so individualized and so isolated from each other, where it's all just about me. And, well, I don't want to get myself harmed, so I'm just going to let that happen to that person over there. it's a problem. It's a problem, and it's a population level problem. It's not just individuals. That's what I keep emphasizing here.
Folks, we're talking with Dr. Monique Swift. She is the president of the Association of Black Psychologists. Candace Kelly, your question.
So, can I just say this first, that every day there are 22,000 acts of domestic violence. That is a lot. I used to sit on a team where we would serve victims of domestic violence, go out to the site and teach them about what they need to know. I would just say that the power will that is out there that put about a study in Duluth, Minnesota to understand what domestic violence looks like. Everybody should Google that so they can understand that domestic violence doesn't just happen as a
Say it again. Say it again. Repeat what you said. The power of.
Yeah, it's called the power will, and
Got
it's a
it.
will that, yeah, and it describes all the types of domestic violence that can be put in someone's life, mostly a woman, whether it's intimidation, isolation, using the kids, finances, flat out abuse. And it is really, really important that people actually know the signs, because sometimes people don't know that they're even in a domestic violent relationship because they're just so used to doing it and they're not physically getting hit, but that's actually kind of a buildup, and it allows the man, in most cases, to kind of continue. Another thing that people don't understand, and I know that I kind of had to look at this in a different way, is that domestic violence death is the highest act of domestic violence. People try to, and it's easy to separate it. You might say, oh, well, that's a murder, that's a homicide. It really is the highest act of that person being mad at the menu that person was yelling at and got away with. So when you look at it like that, that's why you really have to get in and say something. Now, I'm a say something person because of my training. I think one of the good ways, and I've seen people do this, and that they have had interventions, the same way that you do with someone that's on drugs. The problem is in this society, and you've been talking about this, is that domestic violence isn't something that we kind of admit to, like drugs. When people are on drugs after 10 years, we give them a cake and say, I've been off drugs for 10 years. We don't do that with domestic violence. It is a secret that is so sacred within relationships that it's really, really hard to parse. But I would just strongly suggest that people look at that will. And I just want to say one more thing, and that is, when I took the class to train to be on that team, the one thing that really resonated with me was that when most people are carrying out acts of domestic violence and they're mad, it all originates from some type of fear. And as you mentioned, Roland, fear that their job isn't going to pay something, that they're not a good father, that they're going to be embarrassed. They're going through a domestic situation, and I've lost custody of my kids, like the former lieutenant governor. And so you have all of these things, but it generally, that seed of fear, it really is something that if you are in a situation and you think about it, that's where you can really start, because it is a mental health issue. There is no reason why you should be hitting someone or screaming at someone because of something over the menu. You have to get that professional help to figure out, why are they doing this? What is that fear about? And if you're an outsider like you or I, and God bless you, because that is so difficult when it gets to a point where you have someone in your family that is a victim of domestic violence, because then that takes up everybody, right? Everybody's time, everybody's energy, and of course, all hands on deck. But if you do the work early, it involves everyone, not just that woman, because she's the person who's not going to do it. Why? Because she's going to suffer the repercussions if she does call the police, and then it escalates even more. It takes a woman an average of 8 to 9 times to leave a domestic violence situation. So as a friend, as a family, jump in and get involved, because that one menu where that goes wrong and you see them yelling, the highest act of that is a murder-suicide.
And Dr. Swift, as Candace was talking about the whole issue of fear, again, I'm thinking about people commenting saying, why are y'all making excuses? Why are y'all trying to explain this away? And I kept saying, we're not trying to explain away a murder. We're not trying to make Justin Fairfax the victim. What we have to deal with is, how do we look at what somebody is going through, to Candace's point, so it doesn't become the ultimate act of domestic violence? That's really what we're trying to do with all of these conversations, is to not go there, Doc.
Exactly. My sister said something really, really important. I just want to bring back
Go
to
ahead.
that.
Go ahead.
She talked about sometimes people, and many times, don't even realize that they are in a domestic violent relationship. They don't even realize it. It was like, oh, he had a really bad day and this is what happened. Or he's been under a lot of stress and this is just what happened. Or I should not have said this. I should not have done this. I should have known better. Right. But, he's usually really so like we don't often think that, oh, this is domestic violence. And sometimes when you put a name on it, that's when you can begin to act against it, right? Or deal with it. And the people who are perpetuating it, often they don't see themselves because they feel justified in doing what they've done. They're reacting out of whatever is going on in their mind, and they don't see themselves as committing domestic violence. And so all of this is so insidious. And then you have the neighbor next door who's listening to the banging and listening to the yelling and the shouting, and they're like covering their ears because they don't want to know what's going on, right? So we are in a society where we don't want to look at this. This is the ugly side, and we want to just get away from it. The person that commits it, we want to lock them up, throw away the key, and not think about it again. But this is something we need to bring front and center. We need to look at it. This was I had a lot of conversations actually about around this during COVID, when we were distancing from each other. We were shut in because, of course, domestic violence spiked. People did not have outlets at that time. People did not have assistance and supports. The networks were broken, and so it was a thing. And from then to now, I'm seeing the conversations kind of reduce again. But we do have to bring this front and center. We have to look at it and look at it honestly. And also, my sister talked about, having a plan of action in play in order to be able to respond to this. And not just the person who's being beaten, but all of us have to be a part of the solution.
Michael.
All right, Dr. Swift Muhammad. I've been seeing my question is multi-layered, but so I've been seeing a number of social media posts from African American women, and some of them that I know, and they're saying things like intimate partner violence is not the same thing as mental health, right? And a lot of what they're talking about in relationship to Justin Fairfax and Serena is nothing solution oriented, preventing this from happening, preventing domestic violence from happening. So my question is sometimes intimate partner violence, is that related to mental illness? Is that how is it compounded by mental illness? And also in its just alone the different types of manipulation that Candace mentioned. Is that in itself some type of mental illness? Okay. And what can we do to keep these tragedies from happening?
Absolutely. The manipulations is part of a mental health condition. The violence, the violence that's happening between partners is absolutely mental. I don't quite understand the perspective the women that you're referencing are coming from when they're saying that this is not mental health. This is not related to mental
Hey
health.
Doc, I got a lot of sisters coming after me
Yeah.
saying this is not mental health, and I was like, I don't know what else to call it. I don't. I'm like, how a person reacting is, it's because of what's going on up here. Depression, depression ain't what's happening in your leg. Depression is what's happening up here. And I'm literally on these posts, and I'm like, what are y'all talking about? And they're like, well, if you call it mental health, that means that you're softening this. I'm like, no, it is a state of one's mental being.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that the only thing that I can consider is that they're trying to position this in a way that it doesn't, perhaps they think that if you say this person is experiencing mental health illness, that it excuses them somehow. But it doesn't. It really doesn't. People still have to be accountable for what they do, how they act, how they treat other people, the risks that they put even upon themselves. So it is, in fact, a mental health issue. um, you know, it deals with how we think, our emotions, our behaviors, our psychological presentation. These are mental health dynamics, right? And so it is absolutely, I don't know what else to say in that regard. It is mental health. And so this intimate partner violence is something that is happening, I would say often in the work that I've done, it's rooted in trauma for the people that are perpetuating it. These people are people who are experiencing, who have experienced trauma, and they're perpetuating the cycles of trauma. And so that's mental health, right? That's mental illness. Where many people are suffering from experiences of trauma, and it creates very dysfunctional ways of operating in the world, most particularly in relation to other people.
I want to bring in Dr. Tony Prothero Wiley, who's a licensed professional counselor. Dr. Wiley, glad to have you be a part of this. Tori, I'm sorry, be a part of this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Roland.
I had a sister tell me last night. She called me about 1 o'clock in the morning. She said, "Roland, these sisters, they're angry because they're going through grief." And I said, "I understand that." I said, "There are brothers who are also grieving."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Well, you got to give this a beat." My response to her was, first of all, we all grieve differently. What I said is, there's nothing that right now, because we've got no direction from either family when it comes, I said, I can't, right now, I can't give to a scholarship fund for the kids. I can't do anything when it comes to therapy. I can't do any of those. I said, so there's nothing that I can do. I said,
Mm-hmm.
but what I can do while people are angry and grieving, I said, I can use my platform and my voice to address the issue of violence and how we need to be stopping it. And others say, well, now's not the time. And I said, well, I can't, I said, I don't want to wait a week because something else may happen. And so as folks are, as you responding, and they're on Threads and Twitter and Instagram, and folks are doing posts on my posts, and I didn't like that your post of Justin Fairfax, and you used too many photos of people smiling, and it's all different response. And I'm saying we will never be able to confront the violence that is happening if we don't confront the people who are committing the violence.
Yes.
Speak to that.
So to the conversation that you and Dr. Swift were having about how the women are calling in, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for this topic, because I do think that we are at a pivotal point between Black men and Black women. Our community is truly at each other's throats when it comes to intimacy, love, and being able to emote. And so I agree to what you're saying from the standpoint of this is an opportune moment to talk about violence and how this got out of control. But then on the other side of this, Roland, I do feel like many Black women feel as if when it comes to us, it's always minimized.
Mm-hmm.
That, when it comes to, justice, when it comes to, the DEI situation, everything when it comes to Black women, we are always expected to chin up, chest out, wait for the next opportunity. And so in lieu of that, what I'm saying is we all got to come to a place of empathy for both sides. The issue is we're led by an administration that has no empathy. We are led by people in corporate America and in the legal industry, and in any industry, the university industry, the educational industry. We are led by people now that show no empathy. That it's always the worst case scenario and the worst verdict for that worst case scenario. So empathy must come into play. Self-awareness must come into play. We got a lot of people walking around, and because of these things, we feel like we're not connected. There's a distance. There's an emotional distance and delay because of this and because of AI and all the other things technologically going on. But the gift of empathy is leaving. And so that's the thing that I feel like if we can start to really talk about humanity, let's leave the gender thing along, let's leave the race thing along and focus on simple conversations around humanness, we will be in a different place.
Dr. Swift, I posted a clip from one of the brothers last night, and a sister jumps on my page. She says, men talking to other men ain't gonna solve nothing. They need help. And my response to her was, you clearly didn't listen to the show. The brother said, if we can get men to open up to a friend, then they're now on the pathway to go talk to a therapist. And I think
I love that.
and I think, say it again. Oh, I'm sorry. And I think what,
I love that.
and I said, and sister, I said, no disrespect, but these are two experts giving us techniques to deal with this, and we can't reject it because we don't like what they're saying. And I think what Dr. Prothor Wiley just laid out is she's right. I mean, folks are at each other's necks. Again, I got folks who are mad at a Serena Fairfax post, who said I've used too many photos. And then when the Boule asked me to take it down because their logo was in it, and I deleted it, then they mad because I didn't take it down because the critics made me do it, because they made me do it. I was like, well, hold up, but you wanted it down. And so folks are going back and forth, and folks have been hitting me like, Ro, you good? I said, y'all, I've been doing columns since I was 17 years old. I'm used to criticism. This ain't my first rodeo. I said, we gonna stay on a pathway of helping people, educating people, and trying to deal with this issue. But this is the thing. This battle is going on, and I'm like, one thing no one can do. You cannot listen and process when it is a battle of rage and fight going on.
That's right. That's right. It's a both and. It really is a both. We need to do all of the above. I'm focusing on, because this conversation is talking about those who are perpetrating the harm, the violence. And Dr. Prothor Wiley so appropriately brings in the empathy for the women who are angry, who are always, not just in these instances, right? We're always told chin up, chest out, go forward, bite the bullet. Just handle it, suck it up, right? And so all of it is needed. And I don't know why we get into these very petty, conflicts over these teeny things. We need to do it definitely is a both and. We need to do all of this. We need to hold empathy for those who are being victimized. We need to hold empathy also, unpopular though it might be, for those who are victimizing, right? To understand it. And then we need to bring this family back together again in the end. So the digging and understanding is not just to identify a problem, as it were, and throw the person away. The digging is for the point of helping us to understand and for them to understand what's going on, why they did what they did, and to own accountability for the harm, because studies show that's when reform happens, right? Reform doesn't happen because I go to jail for 10 years, 20 years, or what have you. Reform happens when I am contrite because I recognize that I harmed someone and I don't like the fact that I did what I did. That's where restorative practice comes into play.
Dr. Prothor Wiley, as you were talking, a sister sent me this text this morning. And she said, I have a master's in psychology. I've dealt with domestic violence. She says, Roland, this is something men need to figure out. She said, I've talked, because when you talked about the human aspect, that's what triggered this. She said, women can't solve this, especially now. She said, we don't even have the empathy to understand or the capacity to take this on. And these are her words, and I'm not judging her. She said, men, this is a moment when men need to be speaking up. And the reason that I say that is because I told the story when I was at CNN and when the Chris Brown Rihanna situation happened, the domestic violence situation. I surveyed every network, and every time I saw the discussion, it was always women. And I said, why are we not seeing men talk about domestic violence? And so when I got the feeling for Campbell Brown, I said, I want an all-male panel. The producers hated it. They hated it. I wanted Kevin Powell to come on because Kevin Powell had been openly talked about abusing women and how he had to, as Dr. Swift said, go through repair, and he talked about it. They said, oh, he's not important. The next week he was on Oprah, and I said, oh, he good enough for Oprah, he couldn't come on CNN. But what was crazy, and so ever since then, I kept saying, we cannot confront domestic violence and not have men a part of the equation. So somebody told me, why don't you have 2 male psychologists? I said, because I needed men talking about the problem. I said, if we only have women talking about it and you leave men out of it, how do you leave people out of a conversation when 96% of the problem are men? And so I'm like, yo, the voice has got to be there. I'm like, black male organizations have got to step up. Justin Fairfax was an alpha and he was in the boule. And I'm saying alpha and the boule should be leading on this issue of men and domestic violence. I'm like, this is what leadership is supposed to be about.
Correct. And I will take it even further too, Roland, from a standpoint of the young men who watch their mothers be brutalized, and then they at some point began to brutalize or to hurt women as well. Those reformed men need to come out and talk to men as to modeling, talk to men as to mentorship, talk to men as to humanness again. But what we do is we get reformed, we get refined, and then we forget.
Or we go quiet.
Yes.
I don't want nobody to know about my past.
Yes.
But you can be freeing another brother who says, oh man, I didn't realize that was your past.
Yes. To have men in real time talk about what comes over them once they become enraged, what has happened to them in a way that can teach men how to not only change and shift when they're triggered, but also how to love their women better. I mean, just period. Like this should not just stop with a man not being violent.
Right.
This should stop with a man having and showing compassion and empathy and emotional intellect.
Right. How to love, how to affirm, right, because everything is not about a outburst or a violent reaction. I'm gonna come back around. Candace, you have a question? We added Dr. Prothert Wiley. You have a question?
Yeah, I guess my question is, in terms of what we can actually do in the moment, what would you suggest? I mean, I know what I've learned, but listen, this is 2026. It's a different time. We've got different stressors. I mean, I think ultimately you have to talk to someone in order to actually solve this problem. If they don't do it out here, they're going to do it behind bars in terms of talking to a psychologist. But in terms of the regular person who has a friend that they see in a situation, what do you say is step one on opening that door for conversation that might lead to some action?
Giving that person an opportunity to share their truth, like asking a person truly what's going on and wanting to hear what's going on, not having a conversation to change them, to fix them, to correct them initially, but to just show, again, empathy and ask a person, what's going on with you? Let me understand what is perplexing you. And then to have a true conversation from that person's perspective. People have a hard time accepting change when there's no, of course, clarity. So as long as I'm confused and you confused and you confused, then how exactly do we get clarity so that we can find a new path? You can't get clarity without questions, and you can't get a great conversation without a person feeling like they can trust or at least feel like they're going to be heard in a conversation. So the conversation needs to truly be inquisitive as to why do you do what you do? What has happened that makes this so common or easy for you to do?
Now, I have my guidelines, but when do you call the police? When is it, you know what, this isn't a talk thing anymore. We need to call the police. Because I just saw you punch your wife.
Yes,
as an example.
I do agree. Now let me dial back. I definitely agree that, when you witness in real time violence, male or female, humanity should say that I'm going to do something to help this person. I'm going to do something to help this person that obviously is being hurt. Now, once we get into the throes of that, just like when a person commits a homicide, from my understanding, there are some training and tacticals where police come in first and talk from a perspective rather than just locking up. Don't get me wrong, lockup needs to happen. I will never say a man should not go to jail for hitting a woman, ever. But what I am saying is to start a conversation. And the conversation may need to start with cuffs on. I'll be honest.
Hmm.
It may. It may.
Okay.
Michael.
Um, my question is, what are some ways that you suggest that we raise young boys to grow up to be men that don't abuse women in the various ways that we talked about, not just physically hitting, but the ways that Candace talked about on the power wheel? Okay, when we have boys that
Mhm.
may grow up in homes, they may not see abuse. Maybe it's a single parent home, what have you. But what are some tips that you can give us?
Well, if the young man is in the home with his father, the father should be modeling not just behaviors, but even how he thinks and speaks towards his wife. Like a lot of people don't correct children when they talk back, when they're unruly, when they're mean or rude to their mothers. That's a great place for a man to start, is to just simply model that I'm going to cherish this woman and talk to this woman like she is important to me, significant to me. If a child doesn't have access to a man in his house, but he is connected to a church, he is connected to school, he is connected to organizations, these single moms need to go out and find men that can pour into their sons the way that they want their son to become. So I do think that a lot of it starts with parenting, but I also think, again, your modeling and your mentorship is what's going to make youth look different.
I,
Okay, thank you.
I want to close with this, and I would love for both of y'all to respond. This morning, 7:24 a.m., a brother sends me a text, very prominent individual. He said, "Brother, your Unfiltered last night was everything." Um, he said, "Justin was a friend, and I let myself lose touch. And I knew in my spirit he needed a stronger anchor and a voice that countered some of the other things he was feeling. My heart hurts deeply about this tragedy. I thank you for helping me."
Mm.
Then, as I was driving to the studio, another sister, prominent sister, sent me a text. She said, "Just wanted to say, great show last night, very touching. Fairfax was a personal friend, and he struggled so much over the years. My heart is broken for the entire family. I lost my brother to suicide. Black male mental health is a discussion we need to have." Now, there have been a lot of people who've been critical. That's fine. I can accept criticism. I can accept praise. Doesn't matter to me. But this is the whole point why I fundamentally believe, and I'm going to go to Dr. Swift first and then go to Dr. Bertha Wiley. This is why you can't wait. Because what has happened, I have heard from brothers who, since this murder-suicide, are checking on friends of theirs.
Mhm.
Mm.
I've heard from sisters who are doing the exact same thing, checking on friends of theirs who they know are in contentious relationships.
Mhm.
And so, what I will argue, Dr. Swift, is here we are, um, 48 hours or whatever after this murder suicide, with a murder suicide in Chicago on Tuesday, the murder suicide last week of the vice mayor in Florida. And what we cannot do is say, pump the brakes. We shouldn't be having these conversations. Let us grieve. We should be using every opportunity, every platform to speak on pain, on agony, on mental health, on anger, on all of this, because the desired goal is to protect every sister. And if we
Mhm.
do not put this on Front Street and have open, real conversations and not tucked into our text groups or our signal chat groups, then to be honest, we're going to be back here again and again and again. Dr. Swift, close us out.
Amen. Amen to what you're saying. All of the above. And I'm going to say again, we need to do everything. It has to be a both and. There might be people who it's just too much. I can't have the conversation. I can't hear the conversation. I need to grieve. go grieve. Go grieve. Everybody doesn't have to be in the conversation. You go grieve, and let's go over here and let's have this conversation for those of us who can have the conversation, so that we can keep something going, so that when you finish grieving, now you can come join the conversation or be a part of the change that needs to happen in order to prevent these acts from continuing on in our community. So yeah, I agree 1000%. Do you know the first quote that you read, that you said someone sent to you, it touched me, and it reminded me of that. We say, see something, say something, and too often we get stuck in this. Maybe I shouldn't. What happens if I do? But what if I'm wrong, right? What if I think there might be something going on, but it really isn't? So we just see something, say something, and then and then those of us who receive the question understand that it's all out of love. It's all out of love. We got to do all of the above. We are in crisis mode right now. We have to do all of the above. We need everyone at the table. Thank you.
Yes.
Dr. Protho Wally.
Agreed. I think the sooner the better. I also think that we do need more Black men to show up. Roland, thank you so much for what you are doing and what you are pushing as well, because I do think that there needs to be more of a push. There needs to be more of a necessity for Black women to be taken care of and to be protected. I think that, again, for the Black women that feel like we're not being sung for, heard for, I think that this time right now with divisiveness, we don't need this in the Black community. We really got to figure out in our community how we're going to change and not mimic what's going on in the country.
I'll say this to the alphas, to the kappas, to the omegas, to the sigmas, to the iotas, to Prince Hall Mason, to Black men's church groups, to all of these different entities, Knights of Peter Claver. There are numerous Black male organizations that are out there. And let me be clear, in every single one of these organizations, in every single one, there are brothers who are potential Justin Fairfaxes.
Mm.
There are brothers in our midst who are laying hands on the women in their lives. There are brothers who we are going to cigar bars with, playing basketball with, watching games with, who are triggered, who are angry, who are committing acts of domestic violence, or they are on the pathway to commit acts of domestic violence, including the ultimate act, which is murder or murder-suicide. Yeah. And what cannot happen, we cannot be gathering all the time for fun and games, for stepping, for strolling, for enjoyment, and not having and creating spaces for real, intimate, personal, painful, difficult, challenging conversations, because we say, that's not what alphas do. That's not what the Boule does. That's not what Omegas do. That's not what Prince Hall Mason do. No. So we have these spaces. And then what we have to also then do is begin to open the doors of the church, open the doors of our organizations to brothers who are not in our circles, to say, if y'all need a place to come talk, to come share, to come deal with this, then come here as well. Because the ultimate goal is very simple. The ultimate goal is, whether it is a mother or a wife or a aunt or a niece or a daughter or a cousin, is for them not to go through this life terrified of the Black man who is in their life.
Right.
They should not have to wake up every single day scared. They should not have to wake up every single day walking on eggshells because I don't know what side of the bed he's going to wake up on. And those of us who are seeing these things, and we're seeing these small little things that are happening, as Dr. Swift said, you don't say nothing. Don't come talking about afterwards, after he's killed somebody, but you saw what was going on. I hadn't talked to Justin in a year. I didn't know what was happening in his personal life. I was surprised about the divorce. And so if I did, I can guarantee you it would have been, bruh, let me holler at you. I've taken brothers out to lunch. Hey, let's talk. Because what we have to recognize is there is a cone of silence among black men who believe that it is weak to talk and to share. Well, I tell you what, I would rather talk and share with the brother before he goes to prison, before he goes to jail, or before he puts his woman in the grave. This is not a moment of silence. This is a moment for black male leadership. And the ultimate provider of black men, the ultimate spiritual covering, is when you protect the women in your lives. And that could be from someone who looks just like you. Dr. Proto Wally, I appreciate it. Dr. Swift,
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Brother Roland, may I just say,
Yes.
as president of the Association of Black Psychologists, I appreciate what you just said, and I want to put out to your listening audience that this is what we do. We are responsible to and for our community. We hold space for our community. And so for those who have been injured, who are looking for a space to go, looking for people to respond, the Association of Black Psychologists, abpsi.org, is where you can look.
Well,
And we want to be there with and for you.
Well, listen, this platform was created to give black experts the opportunity to share their expertise. Y'all are welcome back anytime. Send us an email. If you see a story, you see something you want to talk about, let us know. Because, again, white media ain't going to have an hour-long conversation about this issue. It's going to be hit it and quit it. And so that's why this platform was created. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.